an intriguing espionage story during World War II. Today, we decode the secrets of Five Fingers, the 1952 movie starring James Mason. Hi, this is Dan.
And Tom.
Of SpyMovieNavigator.com and our show, Cracking the Code of Spy Movies. 175 out of 195 countries have listened to our show. Okay, thank you. Let's go.
All right, Dan. So before we go on, I've got to jump in here because we have another one of these naming problems, right? It's really important you understand which movie we're talking about. Yes. There is the 1952 movie with the numeral 5 and then the word fingers for Five Fingers. That's the movie we're talking about now. In 2006, somebody decided to come out with another movie called Five Fingers, where the word 5 is spelled out. So you get F-I-V-E, fingers.
Yeah.
As
we're
opposed
not talking
to
about
the number.
That.
Drives me nuts when they do that, but I want to make sure that when you're listening to this, you're listening to what you think you're listening to. We are talking about 5, the numeral 5, fingers from
James Mason.
With James Mason.
Yeah. Hey, we'd like to give a few shout outs to some of our listeners who recently gave us feedback on our podcast episodes. We love hearing from our listeners, so please send us along your feedback. So a big shout out to Morgan Lisney, Graham Thubrin, Ken Bauman, and Streaming Wasteland. Thanks, guys. We appreciate your feedback.
I love people's names they use.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you, guys.
Now, how there is not more attention on this movie, we don't know. Five Fingers is a 1952 American spy film directed by Joseph L. Mankiewicz and starring the fabulous James Mason, Danielle Darrieux, and Michael Rene. The film is based on the true story of Albanian-born Elyesa Bazna, who worked as a valet for the British ambassador to Turkey during World War II and became a Nazi spy.
I think it's valet, not valet, but that's okay.
They say valet during the whole movie. I know. In the U.S., we always say valet, but what do we know?
We speak American English, not English.
Yeah.
And the other thing, too, is, Dan, this movie appears on many of the, if you do a Google search for top 10 spy movies, this movie is often there, but it doesn't get a lot of buzz like some of the other movies, which I don't understand. And since this is based on a true story, it's based on real events. It's a dramatization, so it's not 100% accurate.
Not a documentary.
But I love this type of spy movie because there's some truth to it and it makes it simple. There's not super convoluted plots because it's simple because it's based on a real thing.
Yes.
So you have movies like The Heroes of Telemark, Operation Mincemeat, The Silent Enemy, and more. And we just recently reviewed the new movie, The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare.
And there's even Operation Amsterdam. That was another great one.
And all of these movies have a different feel to them, but most of them are mainly built around the single mission. And I think that's what makes these movies work. We've got a task to do. We go off and do it. And this dose of reality keeps them on track.
Yeah, I think that's true. Good point. In the movie, James Mason portrays the character of Ulysses Diallo, based on Bazna, who sells secrets to the Germans during the war by photographing top secret documents. It's based on a book entitled Operation Cicero by L.C. Moyzisch, who was a character in this movie, by the way, and he was the German embassy attaché in Ankara, and Cicero is Diallo's code name in the movie. Now, there is a significant difference in the real story versus the movie. This is not a documentary, as we said, but a lot of the real stuff is in the movie.
Yeah, okay. So now the interesting thing to me about, you just said that the code name is Cicero, and I think that's a really clever name. Because when you live in Chicago, there's a name Cicero, which is a town here, but really, if you weren't in Chicago, you'd probably think of Marcus Tullius Cicero, the Roman statesman from the 1st century BCE.
Yes.
Now, this guy was famous for a lot of things, but he was probably most famous politically for an event that had him thwarting an attempt to overthrow the government. And he had 5 conspirators executed. Were they the Five Fingers here? And this movie is kind of about somebody trying to change the outcome of, like with what's happening in the war. So I thought that was kind of a really intriguing name here.
Yeah.
In this movie, when Diallo hears his name, he's not trying to help his government. I mean, he's actually going against his own government. But I love this code name because it has some intrigue. And Diello himself, when he heard the code name, said,
Cicero, a man of nobility, eloquence, and dissatisfaction. I like that name.
and there's so much class because he's a valet or a valet, and he's trying to make himself be more of an upper class gentleman in this. And this
Yes.
whole nobility, eloquence, and dissatisfaction, I think, beefs that up. And it's a great line for him talking about what he wants to be, and that Cicero to him is a great name for his code name.
Yeah, it is a great name, and for some of the reasons we just pointed out. I mean, in general, the movie received critical acclaim, really, for its suspenseful plot and Mason's top-notch performance. I mean, he is magnificent in this. All right, this is definitely a suspenseful espionage spy thriller to be seen. It's intriguing. You appreciate the plot line, that it is based on a true story. You like that. And that it delivers a compelling unfolding of the plot through screenwriting, directing, dialogue, and acting. So damn good movie. We will discuss the positives and some negatives of this Cold War spy movie.
There are more positives than negatives.
Absolutely. And I think we could dispel the negatives pretty easily. All right, why Five Fingers? Okay, Tom mentioned Cicero having 5 conspirators executed. I think the name was chosen for a different reason, perhaps. And I'll look at one of the movie posters to help with this discussion. One poster of the movie has a silhouette image of a hand with words written on the thumb and fingers. And on the thumb is written lust, on the index finger, greed, on the middle finger, passion, on the ring finger, desire, and on the little finger, sin.
I think the middle finger should have had the word sin.
Okay. All right. Each of these plays a role in this movie. Now, we recall in the real espionage world, the acronym MICE is used for why a spy might turn against his own government. You mentioned he's working against his own government, Tom. All right. What did MICE stand for in the real espionage world? Why a person would turn on his government? Money, ideology, coercion, or ego. In Five Fingers, we will see that certainly money and ego play a role in Diello's decisions, but also from the poster, lust, desire, and greed play a big role as well. Cicero has a passion for what he is doing and for a woman of his desire. So, a nice, neat little package.
And I like, going through the mice thing, the money, ideology, coercion, and ego.
Yes.
I think in Five Fingers, it's money, ego, lust, desire, and greed, and that gives us the 5 fingers. We replace ideology and coercion. So
yeah. There also is some info about the origin of the, quote, self-titled hand that comes from an anti-fascist image created by German political artist John H. Hartfield in 1928, entitled Five Finger die Hand, meaning the hand has 5 fingers. So, all right. Well, now, we haven't dug a whole bunch into that particular origin, but again, interesting.
You left off the ending of that phrase. The image on the poster then says, with these 5, grab the enemy. So whose hand is going to grab the enemy in this movie?
Yes. All right. In this movie, I think we know who the good guys are and the bad guys are, at least in terms of the West, the West perspective of this espionage movie. But yeah, this is pretty cool. So let's look at some of the positives. All right, it definitely has an intriguing plot. We have the darkness of World War II, spying, deceit, betrayal, double crossing, and love, or not. The film's plot, based on real events, offers a mesmerizing narrative about espionage during World War II. I have to say that watching it the first time, I felt compelled to keep watching, and it was captivating, and I felt betrayed that this spy was selling us out, and felt animosity towards Cicero, not wanting him to succeed. It was that well written. Hats off to Michael Wilson, not Michael G. Wilson of the Bond franchise, by the way.
Now you know why Michael has the G included in his name.
Yeah. For a very compelling transfer of the story from paper to screen. I mean, this guy, Michael Wilson, has done Place in the Sun, 1951, Bridge on the River Kwai, 1957, and Lawrence of Arabia, 1961. So, okay, he knows what he's doing.
Yeah, he absolutely does write very well. And I agree with you, Dan, on this one, that it is well written. And again, the plot is very simple, yet it's compelling. And the ending, I just absolutely love the last 90 seconds of this movie. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit.
Yeah. Again, it's based on true story, but not all the elements in the movie are from the real story. Like we said, there are artistic liberties with the story and some characters, but the movie is a great espionage movie. It's entertaining, and you will want to know what will happen next, which is a formula for success for any movie. So that's absolutely one very strong point. Another is the performances. Another positive, the performances. Oh my gosh. I mean, James Mason delivers an outstanding performance as Ulysses Dielo, capturing the complexity of the character who weighs loyalty versus personal gain. There was at least one time in the movie where he delivered a fabulous line about what he was doing in delivering these top secret documents to the Germans. The Germans asked him that since he was giving all of this information to the Germans, which will help them win the war, why was Dielo insisting on getting paid in British sterling notes? I thought that was a great question.
That really was.
Well, it is a question, and I was wondering about it myself. I was thinking, okay, yeah, that's a good question. And I was thrilled when it came up in the movie. Dielo replied,
In the first place, I cannot sell you the ability to make proper use of the information I get for you. In the second place, by informing a man about to be hanged of the exact size, location, and strength of the rope, you do not remove either the hangman or the certainty of his being hanged.
Many times, you're talking about Mason here. And many times when we look at the casting for a movie, at least for me, I think, well, that actor was perfect for this role. I can't think of anyone else playing this role. And I can't necessarily say this about this movie. I mean, Mason was phenomenal in it, but it's a part that I could see some other people doing. But I don't think it's a part that I can see other people doing better than what Mason does here. I mean, the way that James Mason moves from portraying this arrogant, confident spy back to his more subservient role as a valet, it was spectacular. I mean, and add that the brilliant interface with Countess Anna Stavisca, and you see how brilliant this casting was. The two of them work really well together. And because he's playing a character who's been a valet for a while, he's got to be of a certain age. So he had to get to Dielo's position in life. So I like to look at things like, okay, what are some of the other actors that might have been able to play this role that were around at the time that they made this movie? So I think about some of his contemporaries like Ralph Richardson or Laurence Olivier, two spectacular actors. And
Gregory
of course,
Peck. What about Gregory Peck?
Gregory Peck as well. Now they could have played the dual role of servant and spy very well as well. I don't know if they'd get it better than Mason, but they would absolutely play that well. But again, I told you I love the last 90 seconds of this movie. And the look and what happens to James Mason's character Dielo and how Mason plays this, the facial expressions as he has some information portrayed to him and he has this look of shock, and then where he goes from there. Nobody's going to play that better. I don't care who it is.
I agree. He was absolutely perfect in this role. Not only the delivery of the lines, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. He was spectacular with the delivery of the lines. You actually believed every word he was saying in terms of his character and his facial expressions, his hand movement, his body movement, everything he did in the beginning when he was exuding this confidence with what he was doing and how he was going to basically tell the Germans what they're going to do to pay him and so on. Absolutely spectacular. And the rest of the main cast is excellent as well. Danielle Deriot as Countess Anna Stavisca is superb. She is believable and raises some suspicion as well through her looks and actions. She is great with the dialogue and equally great with the facial acting, like when she's kissing Dielo. Her eyes afterwards, they tell a story, and you're going to want to watch that particular scene. And she does the same a bit later when they kiss. When she turns towards us, the viewers, she has a certain look on her face that we can read only one way. Brilliant acting. Fantastic.
Absolutely.
And then we have Michael Rennie as Colin Travers. He was a British intelligence officer sent to figure out what was going on at the British embassy in Ankara. He was great, but I feel like they could have developed his character a little more because he was so good. He was an intriguing character. He was going to be the guy who figures the whole thing out. And now, of course, you remember Michael Rennie as Klaatu in the 1951 version of The Day the Earth Stood Still.
You love that movie.
Yeah, the original and better than the 2006 version by a long shot. Well, he was absolutely fantastic in this movie. But, of course, we're always going to remember
Klaatu, Barada, Nikto.
he was very good here and deserved more screen time, I think.
And now we're going to talk a little bit more about that concept of him needing more screen time a little bit later when we talk about the negatives of this movie.
Yeah.
So, I think it's an interesting discussion. Now, there are some other actors that do a really good job here. Walter Hampton plays Sir Frederick Taylor, the British ambassador, and he was outstanding and gave a really strong performance because he was Dielo's boss.
Yep.
So we had that boss-valet relationship, and he played that very well. Another really good performance was by Oscar Kalweis. He was Elsie Moyzisch, who has a very big role in this movie. And he was the German in charge, at least the beginning, with the engagement with Dielo. And he also did a really good job in this. And this is a real world character who wrote the book Operation Cicero that this movie is based on. So I thought he was really good. And then we have this kind of mean guy, Herbert Berghoff, playing Colonel von Richter.
Oh, Von
He
Richter
got
was
this really
fantastic.
believable, this tough performance
Great character.
as the German lead in dealing with Dielo after Moyzisch was replaced.
Yes.
And man, wow, he is Von Richter. I mean, he's
Yes.
so solid, so real, so believable.
All good stuff. And then another great positive is the suspenseful atmosphere that this movie creates. The film effectively builds tension and suspense, keeping the audience engaged throughout. And there is really no letdown in the suspense because every second a spy is on the prowl, their cover can be blown. Then what? That's exactly how we feel watching this movie. What if? Then what? Now what? This is what you're thinking watching this movie. This is a well-built atmosphere that you will be immersed in. And that is the magic of great movies.
And I totally agree with you on this one, Dan. I mean, take, for example, there's a scene where this maid comes by to clean Sir Frederick Taylor's office.
Mhm.
And the amount of suspense she adds, and she's not in it much, but
Right.
with what she adds to this, with what Dielo was doing at the time, I mean, not a lot of words were spoken, but there was a ton of suspense added from this one very short little scene.
Yeah, and there's lots of moments like that in this. So terrific. All right, then let's look at another positive, the historical context. Five Fingers provides insight into the espionage activities of the era, shedding light on lesser-known aspects of World War II history, really. Because, yes, part of the story is history, part. Okay, this is, again, isn't a history lesson, so don't tune out. The history's
You mean
fun.
giving a history lesson might make people tune out to our episode?
Yeah. But there is an historical context here that is real and captures well the real feeling of espionage. This is a dark movie because of this spy's betrayal to his country. It is dark like The Spy Who Came In From the Cold is dark, but in a little different way, but still dark.
Yeah, it's dark, but again, it's based on real life events.
Yep.
It is a format for spy movies that I like a lot.
Yeah, it's terrific. And now let's look at the direction. Fantastic. Joseph L. Mankiewicz's direction ensures a well-paced and visually engaging film with attention to detail in recreating the period setting. Mankiewicz is a director who had a 40-year Hollywood career and a successful one. He won both the Academy Award for Best Director and the Academy Award for Best Adapted Screenplay in back-to-back years for A Letter to Three Wives, 1949, and All About Eve, 1950. All About Eve, by the way, was nominated for 14 Academy Awards and won 6. So This is all before we see his great direction here in Five Fingers. He had screenwriting experience from his work at Paramount and directed like 21 movies, including Cleopatra, Guys and Dolls, The Barefoot Contessa, and lots more. So here we see some of what he is famous for and sometimes criticized for, dialogue.
So that's the Barefoot Contessa, the movie, not the cooking show with Ina Garden.
Yeah, not the cooking show. No. I mean, this movie has great dialogue, and under his direction and with great actors, the lines are delivered flawlessly and
written flawlessly as well.
Yeah, and you enjoy them.
So Dan, you talk about the lines here. So let's listen to some of the dialogue here. We'll put a scattering of different points in the movie, different lines that are said, because different people might be saying them or whatever, but it is really good dialogue.
No luck. This city was created by Anna primarily for the convenience of spies. Nobody ever found anybody in Istanbul.
But you must have some other motive. Perhaps you share our disgust with British decadence, or faith in the future of Germany.
Colonel von Richter, if I have a disgust for anything, it is poverty. And if I have faith in the future of anything, it is in the future of money.
I've often wondered, Countess, why did you leave Warsaw?
Bombs were falling. I felt I was in the way.
Some of those lines are just fantastic. And again, the delivery of these lines, terrific, flawless. All right, let's look at another positive, locations. The outside shots were actually Istanbul and Ankara. So that was very cool. Again, in 1952, when most people watching a movie like this have never been to any of these places, nor likely would be traveling to them anytime soon, they're seeing this in this movie. So in the times, this was a great travelogue of a couple of interesting places in the world. Of course, we see Istanbul featured in a couple of James Bond movies as well, originally in From Russia with Love in 1963 and so on.
Yeah, and for me, Istanbul is a beautiful city. I've been to Istanbul. I've not been to Ankara. And yes, they showed the Grand Bazaar because you have to. That helps establish that you're in Istanbul. But there were many street scenes as well. And I like that it wasn't just the big touristy places that they showed in this movie from these cities. You really got a feel for where you were. All right, so that leads me then to the cinematography.
Yes.
Take this beautiful city, you've got to have good cinematography. And we've got it here. The shots are varied, they're fantastic. The lighting is excellent, not to mention the top-notch sound. I mean, there's a difference when shooting in black and white, I think. It's a key element that the director and cinematographer can play with. And they can highlight certain moods and features. For example, lighting only part of an actor's face to show tension and suspense, or really just change the entire ambience of a scene, overall feel for the movie. And I think that's stronger in black and white. And here,
I remember in British Intelligence, that movie, when they did that with Boris Karloff's face, his character.
Yep.
The lighting. It was like, holy.
Yep.
Fantastic.
Really, really good.
Yeah.
And here, Norbert Brodin, the cinematographer, does exceptional work. I mean, he's done The Desert Fox, The Story of Rommel, The Frogman, Thieves' Cross, and other movies. And his work here in Five Fingers, I think, is simply fantastic.
It is. Yeah, it's great. And the lighting is it's just fabulous. And the shot angles and so on are fabulous as well. And now let's talk about the score. The musical score. Bernard Herrmann is the guy who did this. He worked on, let's see, other movies that we may have heard of. Citizen Kane, 1941. Vertigo, 1958. North by Northwest, 1959. Psycho, 1960. And Taxi Driver, 1976. And so he does the score here in Five Fingers, and it is solid. Overall,
you really can't knock this out, and it's too bad they couldn't get anybody good to do it.
Yeah, right. No kidding. I mean, it's amazing. This guy has done amazing work. And the atmospheric Herrmann score here is efficient and effective in capturing the mood and overall setting of this movie by adding multiple layers of tension, suspense, and intrigue. I always think about the scores and the music in movies like this, that if I am not really paying attention to it, but rather feeling it as part of the movie, here, feeling the world of espionage, then it's a success. And here Herrmann creates a score with themes that complement both the overall narrative and the feel of the story and the telling of the story and the characters as well. So this establishes a really nice flow and continuity throughout the whole storytelling and allows the audience to get emotionally involved by naturally responding to the music. As we said, if you look at some of the things Herman has done in his career, he employs some innovative use and variety of instruments as he does here and creates a rich sound that the audience can, as I said before, feel instead of paying attention to. That, I think, is success.
Well, that's the thing, is if you can find a cut of any of these kind of movies where the dialogue's removed and you just get the score,
Yeah.
or if you can hear just the dialogue and not the score, it is amazing how different the movies are.
Yeah, yeah. Again, there are a few minor critiques as well for the movie, but for the most part, I think we can, like we said, readily dismiss them. Here's some of the negatives. Accuracy concerns. Oh my, people are concerned with its accuracy.
It's
This
a
isn't a history lesson,
dramatization.
folks. It's entertainment. All right. Well, based on a true story, the film takes liberties with certain aspects of the narrative for dramatic effect.
Shocking. Positively shocking.
Some character portrayals are altered and other liberties are taken. This is art, not a documentary. So if you are into the real story and want to see all of that in a movie, well, then, like most movies based on a true story, there are things that are not accurate. We just saw in review The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, which is a terrific movie. And it's not 100% historically accurate, though it's based on a true operation, Operation Postmaster, in World War II, which may detract from its historical accuracy because, hey, this is not a history lesson. So if you're looking for a documentary on Operation Cicero, this is not it. You're not going to get it. But it's an entertaining movie based on it, and a lot of the stuff in it is true. Overall, yeah, it's a simplification of the world politics at the time, simplifying the political context of World War II and the espionage activities surrounding it. But again, this is an hour and 48-minute movie. You're not throwing a whole bunch of history in here.
Yeah,
this is, a fun movie to watch.
Absolutely. And for me, the lack of accuracy doesn't bother me at all.
Doesn't bother me either.
What they change pretty much works, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of like like you mentioned, the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare and some of these other movies.
Yeah.
Enhancements or embellishments, they're fine. And it can work like it does here because this isn't a documentary. So as an example of a spy-based movie based on a real mission that struggled, you can look at the movie Operation Mincemeat. I mean, the operation is phenomenal. In that movie, they enhanced it by adding a romance that didn't exist in the real story, and I thought detracted from the movie. In the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, there's a very powerful female part that wasn't part of the real mission, but it worked in the movie.
It did, yeah.
And here in Five Fingers, I think the embellishments help the story.
I do too. I have no problem with it not being 100% accurate and so on. Hey, it's entertainment. It's a great espionage movie. All right, now let's look at another critique, is the character development or character depth. While Mason's performance is universally praised.
How could it not be?
Yeah. Some critics argue that other characters lack depth and development, which could have enhanced the overall storytelling. All right, we mentioned Michael Rennie's character, Colin Travers. Maybe could have been developed more. He was a powerful presence in the movie, and the main character did get to the bottom of what was really happening at the British Embassy. So for the most part, other characters were adequately developed, I thought. Maybe the Countess Anastaviska could have been developed more. Her backstory and the relationship with Diallo before the embassy was interesting and maybe could have been pumped up a little bit. I don't know, but could have been pumped up a little bit.
Yeah, and I'm not sure about this critique, man, because yes, more background on Colin Travers, Michael Rennie's character, it may have been good, but the story isn't about him. The story is about Diallo and Anna.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if adding more would have, again, detracted from the story. And it's the same thing for Anna. There's some people who thought that she should have been developed more, but
Yeah, right.
we get what we need to about her, and we got enough background to make it work, especially what happens with James Mason the last 30 seconds of this movie.
Yeah. I agree. I think in general, the character development was fine. Michael Rennie, I think, maybe they could have added a little more screen time because he was tremendous in it, actually. He was excellent. All right. Here's another critique, the pacing issues. Oh boy, people get crazy about pacing issues. Sometimes it's true. This is not a movie with heavy and continuous action sequences. That's for sure. This is no James Bond or MI movie. I mean, this is a pure espionage movie, and it is slower by definition as we see the story develop. But some viewers think that the slower pace in parts is not satisfactory. So in reality, the slower pace at times is a buildup to key events which will unfold, and part of the fabric of understanding, especially Diallo, the main character, understanding him and where he's from, where he's coming from, and what he's doing. So I think the pace was fine.
Yeah, for me, this is one of those, everybody has their own taste of what they want. And
Yeah.
some people want that more bang bang, and other people want things to kind of develop and they can wrap their minds around it a little bit more. So this is one of those critiques that I can understand, because there are people who will have that thought of this movie. But again, I think it's just a matter of taste.
Yeah, I do too. But this next one really gets me. Ethical ambiguity.
Wait, what the hell
Where
does
do
that mean?
people come up with this stuff?
Stealing.
Why do people come up with this stuff? Okay, yeah. Anytime you have a guy turn on their own country, well, yeah. Where are the ethics? Look at other real life events like the Cambridge Five, Kim Philby, and the likes of those spies who turned on their country. In the U.S., there was Aldrich Ames, born in 1941. He was an American official of the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency who became one of the most successful double agents for the Soviet Union and Russia. And there were many others. This happens enough in history for all of us to realize that because of mice, like we said earlier, money, ideology, coercion, or ego, some in high positions in the espionage world are tempted or trapped. So
It's reality, people.
yeah. So while we feel compelled to be repulsed by their actions, yes, as I said, I was by Diallo's actions, we nonetheless see no ambiguity on the ethical front once we understand mice. So bottom line,
I mean, he says all he cares about is money.
yeah. So bottom line, hey, don't be conflicted. Leave that up to these double agents who may at one point have been conflicted but got over it. This sums up Diallo, right? Here it is. Here's his line. This sums up Diallo. He says,
Spies are notoriously poor businessmen. Most of them are professional patriots, frustrated liberals, or victims of blackmail. And in all such cases, the emotional involvement weakens their bargaining position and destroys sound business judgment.
I think he said.
All right, so the last negative, if you will, about this movie that we've read about is limited appeal. I mean, as we've mentioned, if you're looking only for action sequences like we see in the newer James Bond and Mission Impossible movies, you're not going to find that here.
Ain't finding it here.
And quite frankly, I'm glad you don't. I mean, because I like the espionage story, especially like one like this. You're going to find a heavier focus in Five Fingers on the character-driven drama and the suspense.
Mm-hmm.
There is espionage, there's subtleties and deceit and lies and top secret documents stolen. There are rich characters with over-the-top dialogue, impeccably delivered, especially by Diallo, James Mason's character. But yes, there will be limited appeal if you're into just action movies. Spy movie fan? Then we're pretty sure you will enjoy Five Fingers.
Yeah. And you look at the awards, it was nominated for a whole bunch of stuff. It won a bunch of awards. We really believe this is a great movie. And it's a solid storyline based on a real world event with a dramatic and climatic conclusion. As you said, the last 90 seconds is, whoa. And
well, and I don't want to say that that's the only part of the movie.
No.
You don't. The 90 seconds don't work if you don't get the rest of the movie.
Yeah. I mean, all this stuff makes this a must-see movie. This is fantastic. Okay, we're going to put all our 10 fingers together and wrap this one up with a bow because it's a spy movie worth your watch. Let us know what you think. All right, this has been Dan.
And Tom.
Of SpyMovieNavigator.com and our show, Cracking the Code of Spy Movies. Subscribe to our podcast show and give us a 5-star rating in your app. That can really help us continue to do what we do. Tom and I appreciate you spending time with us. Thanks.